and welcome to a non-vlogmas video. It feels weird after vlogmas saying no welcome to a vlogmas video. If you missed any of my vlogmas videos, I will leave the playlist linked above so that you can catch up on them. There were videos right up until Christmas Day, so I'm quite proud of myself. I thought rather than doing like an ultimate top 10 this year, I'll give you a bit of a rundown of my review of the year and what each of the reading months was like for me. So I've got my list, I've got my big stack of books. So yeah, let's just jump right in. In January, I read 20 books, and I feel like January was a really good reading month in terms of the kind of books that I read being quite different. I had quite a broad spectrum of genres and ages, and I just had a really good start to the reading year. I participated in bout of books, and that is always just a great kick-off. I will be doing the same in 2019 because I think just doing a readathon to kick off the year, it means that you've already kind of like got some of the things that you want to read under your belt. And then my favourite read for January was Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. I really enjoyed it, and I have a video talking all about this one, so you can check that out if you want to know more. Then February was slightly less good. My mum came over to visit in February, and I then travelled to New York in February, so in terms of reading time, it's a short month anyway, and then my reading time was cut in about half. So I read 12 books in February, which I think for the fact that I literally only read for about 2 weeks, is pretty good. I started my rereads. I decided a little bit too late in the year to start in January, and I reread How to Be a Woman by Caitlin Moran, which you know is one of my favourite books, and rereading it was absolutely wonderful as well. And it was a good way to kick off my rereads as well. I actually have two favourite books for February because I read a fiction and a non-fiction that I absolutely loved. I read Misogynation by Laura Bates, and all of these will be featured on my will have been featured on my top 10. This was on my top 10 non-fiction. And then we also have The Sunday Lunch Club by Juliet Ashton, which will have been featured in my top 10 adult fiction of the year, because both of those were absolutely awesome reads. Then in March, I celebrated my 6-year blogiversary. I've had my blog for 6 years now, which is crazy. I've been talking about books over there for 6 years. I can't believe it. I read 13 books in March, so not all that much better than February. But again, I'm not making excuses. I'm just kind of explaining where life got in the way of reading. Towards the end of March, we found out we had to go back to the UK for new visas, and that kind of threw me off. So I didn't read at all at the end of March, really. I read some bits on the flight over to kind of try and keep me distracted, but it was really quite difficult. And I reread Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda, ready to watch the movie, and I watched the movie twice, and I loved it. And my top 10 movies of the year is coming up on Sunday, so might possibly be on there. And my favourite read of this month was Big Bones by Laura Dockrell, and I read this in March, and then in either the end of April or the beginning of May, I can't remember which, might have been the beginning of May, I actually got to go to an event with her at the Lush Book Club in London. So being back in the UK is surprisingly turned out to be a good thing because she then signed this copy for me, and I just got to hear her talking, and it was at Lush as well. I mean, like, what? Then April, I read 25 books in April. I wasn't doing any volunteering or any working. Basically what I was doing in April was going to London for book events. I sort of found out in the first couple of weeks of April that I was kind of definitely going to be there for the rest of the month. So I was able to sign myself up for lots of book events, see lots of bookish friends, which was wonderful. And I had lots of reading time because I was commuting back and forth on the train and kind of hanging around waiting for book events to start. So that, as you know, if you don't already know, that is optimal reading time. So I reread 2 books this month. I reread the first and the second books in the Shopaholic series. I went to the Lake District for a few days with my family, which was really nice, and I managed to reread both of those whilst I was there. My favourite read of the month, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll acknowledge that there is proof that I was reading so much because I was commuting back and forth, because I read most of this book on a tube and a train because I started it as soon as I got it, and that is 5 Years From Now by Paige Toon, which is super shiny, and is wonderful, and again made it onto my top 10 adult fiction books of the year. Then in May was split almost exactly in half by being half in the UK and half here in Denver. So I read 17 books across 2 countries. I participated in Bout of Books, and Bout of Books started in the UK and then ended in the US. So if you haven't watched my vlog for that one, it's quite interesting because, yeah, I do a readathon across 2 countries, well, 2 continents. And kind of didn't know that that was going to be the case until we got the, yes, these are all good, here's a plane, get on it kind of thing, which is a weird feeling if you've never had that feeling. I didn't do a reread in May, just because, yeah, things were quite up in the air. I did get to go to some more book events in May though. I literally went to book events up until, I almost went to book events like up until the night before we left. I think we left on the Friday and I was going to book events up until the Thursday or something ridiculous like that. But yeah, I made the most of being back in the UK and going to book events. My favourite read of May, I don't have a physical copy of because I gave it to a friend because it's so wonderful, and that is Leah on the Offbeat. I think I do need to get myself a copy of it because I talk about it enough on this channel. It would be good to have it here. I made a whole video talking about it, so if you do want to know my further thoughts on that one, you can go and watch that video. Then in June I went to BookCon. So in April I went to the London Book Fair, and in June I went to BookCon. I feel so lucky to have gone to both. I was invited to London Book Fair to go to the Book Blogger Awards, and then I did buy a ticket for BookCon, but then I managed to get a media pass as well, so I used my ticket for my husband, which was cool. And then got to hang out with some bookish people that I hadn't met yet, got to see some other wonderful booktubers who I've been watching for years, and just, yeah, I mean, being New York, let's face it as well. Also went to Canada in June, which had been booked for a while, and it sounds like, oh, I went to England in like March, April, and May, and then I went to Canada in June. Now, Canada was booked and England was not meant to happen. You know, I was meant to be at home in March, April, and May, but no, okay. So that was cool. Again, reading in multiple countries. Where am I? June. I reread The Kissing Booth so that I could watch the movie, and made a book versus movie about that one. So if you're interested, you can go away and watch that one. And my favourite read of this month was Ghosted by Rosie Walsh, also known as The Man Who Didn't Call in the UK. I have a US version because I think that this cover is prettier, but I prefer the title, The Man Who Didn't Call. I don't know, I think so. Mind you, Ghosted is quite simple. Quite simple when you're writing it down in a review as well. But yeah, that was my favourite read of June. Then July, there were a couple of readathons in July. One of them being the Booktubeathon, and I participated in the Booktubeathon. I did all the challenges on here and all the challenges on Instagram, created a whole playlist, so I will try and link that somewhere for you if you haven't already seen it. And it meant that I read a load of books that week because I was like, this week is the Booktubeathon week, this is what I'm doing. So I read 23 books in July. I reread one day because one of the challenges for the Booktubeathon was to read a book and watch the movie, and so obviously I then filmed a book versus movie, and it was really interesting rereading one day after so long. I read that book a long time ago and it has been one of my firm favourites. and rereading it, it was still really good. So it's still kind of up there on my books I have read in my lifetime. I again have two favourite books for this month. When you read like loads of books in a month, it's hard not to just have one. So my first favourite for this month was While I Was Sleeping, which made it into my adult top 10 fiction, and I talk about why in that video. And likewise with this book, One in a Million by Lindsay Kelk. And I'm lucky enough that my mum got me a signed copy of this one, which is very exciting. So yeah, both of those became my favourites of July, which again, out of 23 books, I'm allowed to have two favourites. That's absolutely fine. Then August, again, I managed to do a couple of readathons. There was about a books in August, which I vlogged and filmed, and I think there was a 24 and 48 as well, which may have been part of the About Books. I can't remember. It's all a big readathon blur. But yeah, it meant a lot of reading outside, which was great. I read 26 books in August. Again, this stems back to school and the fact that I've always had careers in education, because August means a good reading month. So when I was at school, personally, we had the whole of August off, so naturally I was going to read. When I was teaching, I could, take a couple of weeks off in August just to read. And so even now my body's like, it's August, we must read. And I don't know, it just feels more focused in August, and I feel like I'm more allowed to just spend time reading. Still, it's that mindset. I didn't manage to reread in August though. Out of all those 26 books, didn't manage to reread. I had a load of library books in August. I think maybe like a load had come out and a load came off a hold, and yeah, so my favourite book that I read in August was actually, I did on audiobook, but I have a physical book, and that is Wild About the Girl by Louise Pentland, which is super shiny. And I listened to this one, and my mum also listened to this one back in the UK. And then when we got together in September, we filmed a review of it together, since we'd filmed Wild Like Me as a review together. So if there's another Robin Wilde book coming, you can bet that we're going to film it together. Then in September, as I mentioned, I did go back to the UK for 10 days, and I was able to go to a couple of book events while I was there. There's a theme to when I go back to the UK, I go to book events. I don't think that'll have happened on this trip that I am currently on when this video is uploaded. I read 20 books, which I think is quite good. I also, that's when I started putting up movie reviews on this channel. I believe it was end of August, beginning of September, which, marks a new transition for me, putting myself out there, doing something different. I did a buddy read in September that became my favourite read, and it is Heretics Anonymous, which I read with Beautifully Bookish Bethany, and we both really enjoyed this book. It's always good when you do a buddy read and you kind of both passionately into it, which, I really enjoyed it. I thought it gave us like extra value as well. Then October and November, I didn't manage to do a reread at all. I kind of like fell off the bandwagon with that. No, I didn't. August, September, October and November. Forgot about the rereads, apparently. Just forgot about them. It's fine. I did 2 in December. It's okay. October, I read 15 books. I had a very quick trip to New York, which was nice to see some friends and do some book shopping and do some reading in New York coffee shops, because that always feels really nice. And then my favourite read of October was Paperback Crush by Gabrielle Moss, which I talk about in a non-fiction book recommendations video. This is about the radical history of 80s and 90s teen fiction. So if you've ever read a Sweet Valley High or a Babysitters Club book, you will enjoy this book. It is so funny, so informative, and so nostalgic as well. Let's not forget the nostalgia. Then in November, I read 17 books, which is massive for me in November. A couple of Novembers I came on here and was like, I read no books in November. Normally I do NaNoWriMo, and I decided not to do it this year, and I found that kind of very freeing, not tying myself to writing every day in November for an internet thing. And it just, yeah, it kind of opened up my time, and I was able to read more books. As you can see, a lot of them were audiobooks because we did 2 quite long road trips in November. We drove to Vegas and we drove to New Mexico as separate trips from Denver. So yeah, we did audiobooks. I also participated in non-fiction November, which meant I did a lot of non-fiction. And so my favourite read of... well, I kind of have 2, again. Favourite reads of November. Firstly, I've got Feminists Don't Wear Pink, which I made a whole video talking about. And then the second one is Gross Anatomy by Mara Altman, because I listened to this one on audiobook, and I'd had it on hold for a while, and the library hold just came, and I was able to start it straight away, and I just kept listening to it. I was lucky that I was in quite a long queue for a car wash at one point, and I got to kind of finish listening to it there, because it was really good. If you have a body, you will like Gross Anatomy. If you think that, you know, some of the things that you dislike or some of the things that you question about your own body are not normal, you need to read Gross Anatomy. You will feel so like, oh yeah, it's not just me after reading that one. And then December, obviously, we're not through with December yet, so I can't tell you how many books I've read in December. I have reread 2 books this month, though. I reread Dumpling, ready to watch Dumpling the movie, and I already have a book versus movie on that one on this channel. And yeah, spoiler alert, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very uplifting, and I would like to watch it again. Might watch it again soon. I also reread Fairy Tale of New York, and that was also a buddy read. And then I did a buddy read of 9 Perfect Strangers, which is down here. It's just off camera, you can't see it. And that was really good as well. I do like throwing in a buddy read. Sometimes I don't like the pressure, but then sometimes I find that kind of helps keep me on track. And so I'm going to tell you my favourite books so far that I've read in December, but it might change by the time we reach the last day in December, because this is going up before the end of December. So you'll have to wait and watch for my December wrap up to see my thoughts on everything I read in December, if I read any more past this point. We all know what December's like. Fingers crossed. Hope for me. Yeah, so my favourite read of December so far is the Christmasaurus musical edition. I read this one, and I did actually put up a reading vlog, and the reading vlog includes me reading this one, so you can hear some of the music which goes with the chapters and sort of see my thoughts on it as I'm reading. But it's just so cute. It reminded me so much of Elf. It reminded me a little bit of Elf and a little bit of E.T., which, you know, just brings about sitting comfortably on the sofa watching these things. And yeah, it was just lovely. And William is in a wheelchair as well, which I think is great for kids to see a main character who is in a wheelchair and is still living a life. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I'm excited that we might be getting a Creakers musical edition, so I'll be able to watch that one. So yeah, so it's been a bit of a longer video, but then I talk about 12 months worth of reading and all the books I've read this year. I surpassed my Goodreads goal. I set my Goodreads goal at 200 this year, and I passed that at the end of November, because November was better than I thought it was going to be. I didn't think I would hit it in November, but I did. Like I say, not doing NaNoWriMo in November really kind of helped helped me at that point. That's what I needed. So yeah, it's been a good reading year. As I say, book events, there's some videos of them here on the channel, so you can check those out. I've done a lot of audiobooks, done a lot of non-fiction as well. So again, I think it's been quite a good spectrum of books, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the reviews that I've put up of the books that I've read. As I say, December wrap up will be coming on Monday. Top 10 movies of the year will be coming on Sunday, so make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on those. And then yeah, before we know it, I will have my January TBR for you. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you on Sunday. Bye.